Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Astrology Now. I'm here with Babula Clement, astrologer extraordinaire, and myself, Cheryl Gottschall.
Extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire. I don't want to blow my own horn. But anyway, so there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things happening. You're going to preface the new moon in Gemini that we're going to talk about. For the people who have contacted me, I don't know if you've been contacted, but saying, are you and Babula still doing your astrology? Yes, we are. Babula was just unwell last month, but she's back with us now. On the very tail end of whatever it was that took her down. So she's going to kick us off, but there's something with some things that are leading up to the new moon because we missed last lunar cycle. But I just wanted to start off, Babula, by just reminding ourselves, I guess, that Pluto, it's gone, it's retrograde, but it's still about leading up to the empowerment through groups when Pluto's in Aquarius, isn't it? So there's a big things on the horizon, I think, as we were just talking about before we started recording.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I in our chat before, I used that phrase, the paradigm shift. Well, this is kind of in a period now, and over the next year or two or three, it's like the mother of all paradigm shifts that we're entering now. I mean, we've been through so much in the last few years anyway, but things are about to really crack open and move along at quite a pace. And I personally find it quite exciting. It feels like we've been waiting for decades for this,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so on May the 26th, many of you listening to this will be aware of this. Jupiter, who spends 12 months in a sign, left the sign of Taurus and moved into Gemini. So that is quite a change of energy. Taurus is more of a stable earth, practical, money sign that deals with the physical, material aspects of life, and nature and so on. Gemini is an air sign, and the three air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, bring us up into the mental plane, into the realm of mind and thought and ideas and thinking and communication and people. They're signs of relationships, with people. And so in Gemini, where a mutable air sign, it's a sign that moves very, very quickly. The mind here, the monkey mind, the mind moves very, very, very quickly. Our minds become very adaptable. And Jupiter is a planet of tremendous expansion. So whatever it touches, it's expanding that energy. So now from late May, for the next 12 months, Jupiter is expanding all things Gemini. So that's communication, ideas, speech, words, information, the media, movement, short distance travel, and things change quickly. And Gemini is a sign that's very flexible.
Yeah.
So it's not, unlike fixed Earth Taurus, it's a complete change from that energy.
Yeah, I always think of swift of foot when I think of Gemini.
Swift of foot, exactly, like Mercury, Hermes, the planet that rules Gemini. And so that's a really important shift. Now, what else is important to say about Jupiter moving into Gemini is that as it did so, it made a trine with the planet Pluto, which, as you said, is now retrograding, but is still sitting in early Aquarius. So mighty, expansive, big energy Jupiter, which is very much about our search for truth and our quest for knowledge and experience, and we expand and grow, is making contact. It's a trine, so it's a more flowing, mutually supportive energy to powerful Pluto, which is he's the lord of the underworld in Aquarius.
Yeah.
So that speaks to me very much of information being revealed.
Yeah, yeah.
But because of the nature of Gemini, the sign of the twins and the sign of the trickster and the magician, you kind of go, is that information real or is it false?
Yeah, yeah. What is the truth?
True or is it not true? Am
Yeah.
I being misled here or is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
And information and words and ideas are going to be flying around. I mean, they have been for a long time anyway, as we know, but boy, it's really hotting up now.
It comes
But
more in,
more information is going to be coming to light that hasn't been revealed before.
yeah.
What were you going to say there?
I was going to say it comes more into our awareness that
Yeah,
there's a lot of information and knowledge that we're being, interfacing with that perhaps we weren't before.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And as you say that, it also makes me think that each of us individually may find ourselves being more open
Mm.
to hearing information that perhaps we weren't open to before. And I mean even just in the last year or two, and whatever that means to anyone, like suddenly we're being exposed to information. This is very Jupiter and Gemini that's making us go, oh, is
Yeah,
that possible? Could
yeah,
that be true?
yeah,
Maybe I need to look into this a bit further. And maybe I need to look at both sides. Gemini is the duality. Well, this person's saying this. What's this person saying about it over here?
yeah,
And we need to keep looking at all the different possible angles and see if we can find in all of that, kind of what's fitting where I'm at currently, but being open to that changing.
yeah. It's like unzipping our mental parameters, isn't it? Pushing them back,
Absolutely.
opening them up. And of course, Jupiter knows no bounds, does it? It's just
Yeah,
expansive. Yeah.
absolutely. And one of the things we can experience while Jupiter's going through Gemini is we can have moments or days we just go, oh, it's all too much. I need a break. It's just too much coming at me. And not only information through different forms of media, but through conversations with people. Gemini is a very social sign. Gemini, if you know any Geminis or people with Gemini rising, Gemini moons, etc., they love the social interaction. It's what they're here for. And that love of just connecting. And in the connecting with people, they're gathering information, they're sharing information, they're making note of things, they're thinking about things in new ways. So there may be times during this next 12 months where we just feel overwhelmed and we're in a bit of information overload.
Yeah.
That's fine. Then take a break,
Yeah.
give yourself a break from information for a few days.
Yeah, and I think I've seen Gemini, they're the networkers, and I know with myself, I'm connected to a few different networks, and it's like you're like you're the connector between the networks of people, and in so doing, not as individuals, but even as a collective, that energy it creates a new how can I say lays down new pathways for different information to keep on flowing around and around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this combination now of Jupiter in Gemini trine Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius is also about networks through groups of people.
Yeah.
And Jupiter in Gemini is really activating that in a major way.
Yeah. Yeah. And cross-pollinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm.
And and because of the nature of Pluto, it can be information coming to light that may have previously been ignored or rejected or simply not been allowed to see the light of day yet, and now it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Or, for whatever reason, or our mind is suddenly open to considering new possibilities that we might have rejected or
Yes.
just not been interested in the past even,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And we know that's been pretty evident in the last 4 years, but many of us have known this for decades, that there has been a lot hidden from us.
Mm. Yeah. Tell me.
Like just almost everything,
Yeah.
like the truth about just about everything. And so this is a huge shift that's taking place.
Mm.
So on May the 26th, Jupiter went into Gemini and will be there for the next 12 months. And as it does so, it makes this contact with Pluto. Now, on the 4th, Mercury moved into Gemini, right? So Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini. So Mercury goes, yeah, I'm home. You know, I can be in full power now and do my thing with information, with words, with communication, with socializing, connecting. And of course, as it does that, makes a trine with Pluto. So now we've got Jupiter with Mercury in Gemini trining Pluto. And by the way, in late May, the Sun made a trine to Pluto and Venus made a trine to Pluto. So there's been already, leading up to this new moon in Gemini, you know, all this activation with Pluto in early Gemini to Pluto in Aquarius is fascinating. And something happens on June the 5th, the day before the new moon, and that is the Sun makes an exact conjunction with Venus right in the middle of Gemini at 14 degrees and forms something that is called the Venus star point. And you know, that happens also 9 months later when Venus is retrograde. It'll make another conjunction with the Sun, and it forms the pentagram, the 5-pointed Venus star, and so on. That's a whole other story. But that's also important because when Venus conjuncts the Sun, it is said, because she disappears from the sky, because for that period of a week or 10 days or so, we can't see Venus anymore, and she's normally a bright star. And it is said that she's in the underworld. She's journeying deep. You know, she's kind of hidden by the light of the sun. And she's currently the morning star. But when she reemerges again after the new moon, she will be the evening star. So she crosses over her position with the sun. So there's all this stuff going on related to Gemini in the days leading up to the new moon in Gemini.
You know, I'm thinking about Venus when she goes into that underworld, she goes into the dark. You know, there's always transformation. So when you come out the other side into the light, there's you know, while you're going through that, there's this reassessment of your values. You know, things shifting, the things that you love, the things that you prioritize, all that sort of stuff. It's that transformative process, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. It's a transformation related to Venus. So absolutely our values, what's important to us, anything around love and relationships in Gemini. And I've been paying attention to this. I'm noticing me too. In Gemini, it's about how are we communicating? This is a time where the planets are really supporting, encourage, even pushing us to say things that we may not have said previously, or to have that conversation that's important, or we're thinking about things differently, or we're making decisions in our mind that reflect a shift and a change that we're going through. You know, so it may just be, yeah, I need to have this conversation with this person. And it may not even be a particularly difficult conversation. It just might be, I just need to have this conversation.
Yeah, or I've been meaning to say.
Right.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Finally get to it.
Yeah, and you finally get to it.
Yes.
So, you know, Gemini is very much about, you know, what's being spoken, what's being said, what am I learning, what information is coming my way, pardon me, what information am I sharing? You know, it's the spoken word, the written word. It's the sign of the wordsmith, you know, writers and authors usually have, and commentators, you know, and people in media, whether it's alternative or mainstream, they're always going to have quite a lot of Gemini. You know, people would think something to say.
You know, speaking of that, before I started this podcast with you, you know, life was different, I must say. But now when people speak, all I see is star signs coming out of their mouth.
I love it.
It's like, oh my God, I wish I could stop doing that. I just can't seem to stop doing it now.
Because you can hear it, can't you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's amazing.
You can hear it in what they're speaking about, how they're speaking it, and even the words they're using.
Yes. Yeah,
People use very particular language according to their sign, you
that's
know?
right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The other thing I was going to say was I was reading that we have this Sun-Venus conjunction every 4 years. Is that right? In Gemini every 4 years?
Yes, in Gemini.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah. So,
whole big story around the Venus Sun cycle.
yeah.
But in Gemini, that's right.
So if we look back as what was going on in June 2020 and 2016 and 2012, etc., etc.,
Yeah.
you get another idea of the flavor of what that means.
That's right. And of course you can also look to your chart and see where 14 degrees of Gemini or where
Yeah,
the sign of Gemini is, what
yeah.
house is that? What area of life does the Gemini energy play out and do its thing? You know, yeah, that's relevant then individually. So yeah, this lead up to this new moon is really interesting. And of course, the new moon, in the days prior to a new moon, we're in what we call the balsamic phase, which lasts for about 4 days. And it's the winding down and completion of the previous 4-week lunar cycle from the previous new moon, which would have
I've
been in
never heard
Taurus.
it called a salad dressing before. That's interesting,
That's right. It's a strange thing because
isn't it?
it's very hard to find. Well, I haven't tried for ages, but years ago I used to dig around in all these online dictionaries to try and find what does that word actually mean, that apart from the salad, from balsamic vinegar. But it and then as we get closer to the new moon, of course, the moon is dark. We're in the dark phase. So it's a time of gestation, of quiet, of withdrawal.
Mm,
And Venus is journeying with the sun. She's invisible.
mm,
And the day after is the new moon. So we're in the dark of the moon, and we could also say Venus is in the dark as well.
yeah.
And Venus is pretty much conjunct this new moon. So it's a very interesting thing. And there's more about that too, because Mercury rules Gemini in esoteric astrology based on the 7 rays. They say that Venus is actually the esoteric ruler of Gemini. There's
Mm,
something really important going on here around the duality, the twin energy of Gemini, the wordsmith, communication, the messenger. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. Venus rules the heart. Are we really communicating from our heart or
mm,
just from our head?
mm.
That's a very different form of communication,
Yes, yeah.
you know. Yeah,
Fascinating.
so very interesting. And at the new moon, which we can look at, there will be 5 planets in Gemini.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's been interesting this year. So there's Jupiter just at 2, there's Mercury at 6, there's the new moon, the sun and moon at 16, and there's Venus at 16. So
Mm,
there's Venus making the star point with the moon. That's very extraordinary.
mm,
And then over here, we've got the conjunction of Jupiter with Mercury. So and you can see here, I've highlighted the trines of Jupiter and Mercury up here to Pluto.
mm.
So, people often think Gemini's a very superficial, lightweight kind of a sign. And it can be, let's be honest, it can be, it's a
Mm,
social butterfly flitting from here to there. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not a sign that you would generally think of as having a lot of depth. But in someone's chart, if they have a lot of Gemini, if they've also got a lot of other, maybe Capricorn, Pluto, Scorpio, like the deeper, stronger energies,
mm,
then that can be someone who has very powerful messages to communicate,
mm, mhm,
and
mm.
and they do so with great, weight and significance. So it can be a very lightweight sign, but it also can be very important as the messenger, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm,
Yeah. And, you think of authors or people who write stories or film scripts and so on. They have to have skill with words and language,
Mm,
and what they're writing may be very powerful indeed. Or
mm.
it could be just, light entertainment, which is nothing wrong with that. We all enjoy a bit of light entertainment sometimes,
Yeah,
and a
yeah.
bit of fun, it's necessary.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I met someone some years ago at a conference, and his role was to go around various UFO groups and sow seeds of doubt, because I'm thinking about Gemini. And he didn't do it publicly. He'd just go from little conversational group to the next one, the next one. And that was his job, to be working for the intelligence services, to sow seeds of doubt. And that's what I'm thinking about, the shadow side of Gemini, because it's
Yes.
from here to here to here, and it can make you doubt yourself in that way.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm.
That's a great point, because as I always say, all signs have a shadow.
Yes. Yeah.
And in Gemini, it can be, you know, I'm of an age where I used to watch. I know this is politically incorrect, but I don't care. I used to watch cowboy and Indian movies as a kid.
Mm.
And there's this phrase that say you speak with forked tongue.
Yes. Yeah.
Says the Indian to the white about the white people. Well, it's true. They
Yeah.
did speak with a forked tongue. So
Mm.
it can be that, is
Mm.
what this person's saying actually true? Because Gemini is so quick on their feet mentally, and they can see one thing one moment and the exact opposite the other.
Yes. Yeah.
At a higher level, that's about being all inclusive and considering all options and going, well, this is true, but actually also that's true as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So sort of,
But in the wrong hands, it can be, I'm going to tell you the exact opposite of what's actually true.
yes. Yes. And
In
it's a
fact,
bit like
that's
that saying, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
exactly, which is why Mercury in Gemini rules magicians.
Mm. Mm.
And of course, as we know, there's light magic and there's dark magic. And
Mm.
then there's also entertaining magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the magician on the stage is keeping everyone so distracted with his very clever, quick, witty banter. And he's moving his hands, which are ruled by Gemini. And he's just distracting you. And you're watching closely, but you can't actually see what
Yes,
he's
I
doing
know.
to
Yeah.
perform the trick.
Mm.
And in the mythology, Mercury Hermes was a trickster. He was cheeky, he was naughty,
Mm. Mm.
got up to mischief.
Well, magicians use sleight of hand, Gemini,
Yep,
for their tricks, and Gemini rules the hands. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm.
So Gemini also rules the lungs, by the way. And so Jupiter going through Gemini may, in some cases, heighten that
Mm.
issue for some people.
Mm.
Gemini people are often quite prone to lung issues,
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah.
It's all about the breath. So breathing is, like this morning, it's interesting talking about breathing. This morning, I woke up really early, which is unusual. I've been sleeping great of late. And it took me ages to get back. And so I just lay there, and something in me reminded myself to just do breathing meditation. And it's not easy because the mind wanders off like that.
Mm.
Keep coming back to just breathing. All I'm doing is breathing, and I eventually dropped off to sleep because all I was working on was just nothing exists right now but my breath.
Mm.
And that can be a really helpful thing while Jupiter's going through Gemini, really paying attention. And when we pay attention to our breathing, we notice our breath starts to expand and deepen, just simply because we're paying attention to it.
And when people speak very fast, they have to stop and take a breath.
They have to stop and take a breath.
Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, there's going to be lots of words. A lot. Jupiter is always, whatever sign it's in, there's going to be a lot of it.
Mm. Mm.
Right. So yeah, so the new moon is a very packed Gemini, and it's certainly increased by the presence of the Venus star point right on it, and Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. So very, very interesting. For some, that could simply mean for a few days you're just ridiculously busy.
Mm.
it's a very busy sign, you know, the busy bee,
Mm.
busy, 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 busy.
Yeah.
So
Or
it could be like that. Just can be a lot of information, messages coming through your inbox and your messages and, you know, from all directions. And
yeah,
yeah,
just chatty.
very
I
chatty.
said to Barry this morning, over the next few days, over the next week, if I seem to be talking a lot because I've got Moon in Gemini, and I don't normally talk a lot, but but when it's in Gemini, I find I just talk about, daily minutiae of life and,
That's right.
all the surface things that go on in life. And while I was telling him I might get a bit more chatty, I kept on chatting and I thought, stop it. Stop.
Oh, that's right. You know, someone said to me years ago, who had quite a lot of Gemini, she said, and I thought this was so funny, but maybe it's true. She said, people are born with a certain quota of words they have to get out in their lifetime. She said, people with a lot of Gemini just come in with this massive quota of words and they just have to get them out.
Yes, yeah,
I think that's very funny, but it kind of fits, doesn't it?
it does. Yeah.
Just have to get the words out, whether they speak them or write them.
The social chit chat. Of course, it can be gossipy and it can be sarcastic too, can't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
That's right. Um, yeah. The other thing to say about this new moon, which brings in another influence, which modifies quite a bit what we're speaking about, is the new moon, the sun, the moon, and the Venus, because the Venus is right on this moon, is making a very tight square to Saturn,
Yes.
which is at 18 degrees of Pisces,
Mm.
right? So that's very close. That's a strong, and the square, anytime we have a square from Saturn to a personal inner planet like Sun, Moon, or Venus, it
Mm.
has a direct impact. And Saturn is an influence that tends to slow things down,
Yeah. Mm.
delays things, creates certain obstacles.
Yeah. Create some challenges where we may have to reassess our plans or
That's right.
prioritize to overcome those challenges.
That's right. So while Gemini is just like ready to move in all directions at once
Mm.
and is brilliant at doing that, very ambidextrous, and um, yeah, just able to do many things. The Saturn influence is a kind of message for all that Gemini to maybe just slow down a bit, assess your priorities, maybe get a little bit of a plan in place, maybe check things out a little bit before you just say that thing.
Mm.
Or if you say that thing, there might be repercussions. You know, Saturn is, well, now look what's happened.
Yes, yeah.
And you might have to then deal with that.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
it's a little bit of a note of caution.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to think of how that would, because, I always think of Saturn as quite enduring, long lasting. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering how that would play itself out in that sign, or with that.
Yeah, I think what I said earlier about there might be an important conversation you need to have. That this Saturn square could be
Mm.
may perhaps add to the weight of that conversation. Like,
Mm.
actually, this is an important conversation I need to have, and there will be some repercussions because of it. It will have an impact in some, not necessarily dramatic,
Mm.
but in a long-term sense, like you were saying, enduring.
Yeah,
You
or
know,
because it can
mm.
be sharp too, like it can be have a sharpness to us, that Saturn, can't it? Do
Well,
you?
it certainly can feel a bit heavy
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
But it could be like something important that needs to be spoken or said or communicated, whether that's in your personal life, publicly, in your workplace, will depend on where all this is in your chart.
Mm.
Um, it could be an important conversation you need to have with a coworker or your boss and say, look, have you got a few minutes? I need to talk to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that because of the nature of Saturn, it can change the dynamic. hopefully for the better, as you clear the air about something, or say, look, actually, you know, you've given me all this responsibility and that's too much for me, or I need to make some changes, or this is what I'm experiencing, or this isn't working for me, or whatever it is.
Or do you think it could also be, I'm just thinking now that, you know, it could, because it can be quite direct too. So it may be like, do you want the sugar-coated version of what I'm going to say, or do you want the Saturn version? You know, like, I'm
Yeah.
going to give you the basics here. No,
Yeah,
no
yeah, the
frills,
basics.
no fluff. I'm just
Right.
going to give it to you
I
straight.
need to, yeah, I need to speak clearly and
Clearly.
straight. And
Yeah.
I think because Saturn's in Pisces,
Mm.
I think that helps for it not to come out too blunt and raw.
Yeah.
You know, there will be a certain sensitivity,
Mm.
which will be really important and helpful if an important conversation has to be had,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Mm.
Or it might be that maybe if you're very involved in social media and finally you just go, I'm sick of holding back on what I'm saying. I need to say how I really feel, or what my real view is on certain things.
Mm.
And the result of that might be that a whole bunch of people unfriend you, and you go, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's more important, which is Saturn.
Yeah.
It's more important to me that I'm true to myself
Yeah.
and I say what I really need to say.
Yeah. It needed to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because Venus is here as well, that's really helpful also.
Yeah.
Venus is here, Saturn's in Pisces. It doesn't have to be done in anger and fury and in a big explosive way. And I think the Saturn can help us to perhaps consider, even think about beforehand even if we have to write notes, you know, a few points,
Mm.
and even refer to that. There's nothing wrong with that, to keep
Mm.
yourself on track and keep your thinking clear.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go, and I've thought about this in the last few days because I've gotten really clear about a few things in my own personal world, and it's great. I just feel very, very clear, and I'm making some changes that have been small things, but a long time coming, and I'm already experiencing the benefit,
Mm. Mm.
right? And part of that's going to include a chat with somebody, but it doesn't feel onerous. I just haven't had the opportunity to do it. It just feels like, and I need to speak about this to someone,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's and it will change things. So yeah. So I think it's that kind of thing, and everyone's going to experience this in their own particular way. So you have 5 planets in Gemini at the new moon, and the new moon is square to Saturn. You know, reassessing priorities and just taking a little care with our communication.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so that's on June the 6th. The new moon's actually on Thursday, June the 6th at 10:37 p.m.
Right.
Those who like to keep a track of these things.
Okay.
Um,
Down.
and on June the 8th, then Venus comes to 18 degrees and forms the exact conjunction with Saturn. On June the 9th, and this is an interesting one, on June the 9th, just 3 days after the new moon, Mars, which has been in Aries now for 6 weeks,
Mm.
you know, Mars loves being in Aries, its own sign, fiery and direct and full of action, moves into Taurus.
Mm. Fascinating.
Yeah, big change of energy.
Well, it's a slowing down, isn't it? Because Mars just wants to rip through things like wildfire, but Taurus says, whoa, 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 slow and steady, please.
Exactly, slow and steady. So Mars, the warrior, the impatient energy, has to now adapt to the energy field of Taurus and kind of
Yeah.
come to ground, slow down, maybe think about planning, because Mars in Aries just goes,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, just now, just do it. And people with Mars in Taurus, in my experience, are like that. They will take action, but they consider and prepare themselves first,
Mm.
kind of figure out a plan, a bit of a game plan, get organized, and build up to, okay, now I'm ready to bring this thing into action And to manifest, Taurus is a sign of manifestation,
Mm.
and Mars is going to give Taurus a lot of energy,
Mm.
perhaps to work or get out into your garden and dig holes and
Yeah.
do some landscaping, or perhaps make some decisions and choices about your finances.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
It's very helpful for the physical body. Generally, people with Mars and Taurus have very strong physical bodies. Good to use our body while Mars is in Taurus for 6 weeks. It's very determined
Mm.
combination. Mars in Taurus, it's like, I'm doing this and get out of my way. I may be moving slowly, but you're not going to stop me.
Yeah, I'm keeping at it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop till I get to the end.
Yeah.
Whereas Mars in Aries is all about starting something new and then like, okay, I'm on to the next new thing.
Yeah.
No, Mars in Taurus will stick to it until it's done. So that can be really helpful if we have some kind of a project to just really apply ourselves to it.
Mm.
Yeah. Perhaps work with strengthening our physical body as well.
Mm.
Get onto that exercise plan to get actually physically stronger. And see, as Mars moves into Taurus, it makes a square to Pluto
Yeah. That's
over those few days, over that period, from kind of the 9th to the 12th, 13th or so. That's pretty intense.
yeah, power struggles with and confrontations with authority figures.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it could come out as, and you'll see these things show themselves on full display with young children because they don't censor and hold back. It
Mm.
could be, you can't tell me what to do, or no, I'm not doing that. So Mars in Taurus will dig its heels in, right? And refuse to budge.
So does it make that square the same day?
Well, technically it's on the 11th. So Mars moves into Taurus in the afternoon of the 9th.
Right. Yeah.
And by the 11th, it's moved from 0 to 1 degree of Taurus, and then it will make, but it's pretty much square as soon as it moves into
Yeah, right.
Taurus, but it's exactly square on the 11th.
Mm.
And Mars-Pluto combinations, particularly square, can also feel like pressure. It can feel like a buildup of pressure.
Mm.
So and in the fixed signs, the pressure can be really strong.
Yeah.
So like a volcano, when pressure builds up and there's been no release valve, like a pressure cooker, our mothers had pressure cookers and it had a release valve to release steam.
Mm.
If that valve wasn't there, at some point, the thing would explode. And
Mm.
thankfully, I never experienced or witnessed that, but I've heard tales from people who've actually witnessed a pressure cooker exploding.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, yeah, that's a very Mars square Pluto kind of a situation.
Pretty dangerous, isn't
Yeah,
it?
so just be aware of that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking as I say that, while all these planets are in Gemini, and then this Pluto-Mars square kicks in the
Yeah.
fixed signs, sometimes pressure can be released by just speaking and communicating something to someone instead
Yeah.
of bottling it up and holding it in.
Yeah. So it's from here that I was looking at the planetary changes. The energy starts to change for June, doesn't it?
It really does.
Mm.
It really does. We've got this strong influence of Gemini coming in, and then Mars moving into Taurus is a significant change.
Mm.
Um, and then something interesting happens just before the full moon, around the 17th to the 21st. Mercury, Venus, and the Sun all leave Gemini and move into Cancer.
Yeah. Mm.
Right, so we're very much in a Gemini period now. And then later in the month, some of these faster moving inner planets, they move into Cancer. And as they do, or just before they do that, one by one, they make a square to Neptune,
Mm. Mm.
which is in very late Pisces.
Mm.
So when they're still at 29 degrees of Gemini, just before they hit Cancer, They make an exact square to Neptune at 29 of Pisces. So that's very watery.
Yes, and yeah, and with the Cancerian energy coming in, it's like a complete shift in our emotional landscape, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. So, remember Jupiter will be in Gemini for 12 months. And I want to come back and say something else relevant about that bigger picture wise. But yeah, around the 17th to the 21st, these three inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and the Sun, square Neptune, and then move into Cancer. And of course, when the Sun moves into Cancer, which it does on the 21st at 6:50 a.m., that's the moment of the solstice. For us, it's the winter solstice. I just a few days ago, I thought, how did we get here? It's going to be the winter solstice any minute now.
I know.
Like, how did we get here so quickly?
It was only Christmas yesterday.
No. And it was still summer. It felt like it was summer a few weeks ago.
It was, yeah.
And we're at the winter solstice almost. Like, what the hell happened?
We had a very long summer.
We did.
Mm.
We did.
Mm.
So, yeah, so that's an important point. And then the day after the solstice, we have the full moon.
Yeah,
When the sun's at 1 of Cancer and the full moon will be at 1 of
Capricorn.
Capricorn,
Yeah.
and that will be square Neptune.
Yeah.
So there's a very interesting water influence that will start to come in, which is that shift from the world of the mind
Mm.
into the world of feeling and
Yeah, yeah. And when we get,
sensitivity and
sorry, I was going to say when we get into energy, it's all about what we feel, what we tune into, what's resonating with us, that sort of sensory, that sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
and very much about what our personal needs are and
Mm.
and I always like in the southern hemisphere that Cancer is the winter
Mm.
because it feels like we don't want to go out much. We want to stay home and stay warm and cozy and eat bowls of soup. And if you've got a fireplace, which you do, like the fire. I mean, it's just so Cancerian, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a hibernation.
It is.
It's a hibernating energy, if I could say
It
it.
absolutely is.
Yeah, because it's in its little den and it's just having a break.
Yeah,
So
it is. I
yeah.
mean, as you know, I have a moon in Cancer. And when I was sick, I got hit by a flu.
Mm.
And I just want to point out something about that as I say that. Everyone in my family got this cold flu thing. My daughter and the children, they all recovered really quickly. I was the last to go down. I could feel it coming and I was fighting. I went down hard and I'm still recovering. I'm a lot better. The reason it affected me more than it did them was because of my transits.
Mm.
So that's an example of why astrology affects us all very individually. Like the whole family gets this thing, and then finally I get it, and it was really rough going. But I
Mm.
had a big Neptune transit and a big Saturn transit and a big Chiron transit to my Neptune.
Mm.
There's no way. I tried to fight it off. It's just, I had to go down. So, but what I wanted to say about the Cancer, I didn't leave the house for 9 days.
Mm.
And even though I wasn't well, like very quietly, I'm going, oh, this, I don't have to go anywhere.
You were happy.
I was.
Yeah.
So that Cancer part of me can happily just stay at home and not go out the front door for
Yeah.
days and days and days.
Yeah.
And now that I'm recovering and energy's coming back again, I can feel life coming back and like, okay, let's go.
Mm.
And yeah, it's very so as we come into the Cancer time, don't expect that current social energy to
Mm.
stay there. It's going to change.
Mm. I like that too.
Yeah.
I think I've got mostly air signs that predominant in my chart.
Yeah.
That when I get to that stage too, like in winter, it just naturally lends itself to that Cancerian energy to stay home, hibernate, have a nice cup of hot tea, put your cozy socks on, have doona days, and
Dressing gown.
sit in front of the fireplace and just be. And you know what? Just leading up to that, all I've really felt like I've had moments of it, but then it changes. Then my moon in Gemini kicks in and says, got to go out, you know.
That's right. I need people.
Yes.
Where is everybody?
Where is the world? But then, you know, I just have times where I just want to stay home and garden and cook.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
And it's nourishing and it restores us, doesn't it? Because
Yes.
life is very full on and in so many ways and for so many reasons. Yeah,
Yeah,
we need times like that to just withdraw.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's necessary. And so we'll come into that period. And just a couple of things. At the end of the month, a couple of things are going to happen. The Black Moon Lilith will leave Virgo and go into Libra. Saturn on the 30th will turn retrograde. So already through June, Saturn's beginning now to slow down. He's going to get to 19, like he's currently at 18. It's going to take him the next 3 weeks to get from 18 to 19 degrees. He's slowing down. And on the 30th, right at the end of the month, he will be stationary. He's at a standstill and he'll begin to turn retrograde. And then 2 days later, on the 2nd of July, Neptune will turn retrograde, both in Pisces. So we'll look at that more closely. So, there's quite a lot happening in June.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was looking at the planets. I thought, because, sometimes we go, this is really heavy, and then this is not a lot happening. But I thought, actually, there's a lot happening, but it's more to do with not the heaviness, but just the change.
That's right, change.
Yeah, change of it all. And that's, change usually brings some sort of transformation, but they're not always the same. It's just change. Yeah.
Just change, that's right. Yes, it doesn't have a heaviness. You're right, it doesn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So, yes, I know. So, for those of you who love the Gemini energy and all it represents, enjoy this because it's really upright now and it's a great time to be learning stuff, communicating, receiving information, having your mind stimulated, hanging out with all your favorite people, it really is.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, I look forward to the next lunation.
Yes, we'll see what's cooking then.
See what happens then. So everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like it, and if you want, share it and subscribe to get notice of the next one, which comes up every 2 weeks when we have a new moon, approximately new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon. Life goes on, doesn't it? Ticks over and over and over.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So we've certainly gone over the 4-year mark. I think we started this in 2020. Can you believe it?
And it was a one-off chat, a one-off interview.
Was, yeah.
And here we are 4 years later.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. It's been a real journey to look at these things in great detail, and particularly when life was heavy for us in the 2020, 21, 22, to sort of find some sort of insights and understanding and know where the light at the end of the tunnel was. But I think we've got there, but we're just seeing different tunnels now.
Absolutely.
Many of them.
So much has changed and so much has opened up. And astrology is a great tool to help us guide our way through it and to understand and give it some context and give us lots of insight. It's fantastic.
It's a story of the soul's journey, isn't it? Really?
It really is.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, thank you very much, Paula, once again.
My pleasure, Cheryl, as always.
And I'm sure I'll see you soon. But to everyone else, we will see you again at the next lunar cycle when we talk about, what did you say? The full moon.
Yeah, the full moon.
In Capricorn. So,
yeah, Capricorn, Cancer. Yep.
Yeah. So until then, stay safe, be well, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.